Great. Dear colleagues, we have the absolute chance to bring you to the lunch. Please don't jump over the table. Don't try to eat us. We are not eatable. No, cooked potentially, but not yet. So we'll try to not be too late for this panel, for which the topic is about digital maturity. So, dear colleagues, queridas colegas, caros colegas, and then I've covered 30% of the worldwide population with these three languages, normally. Welcome to this panel discussion on the evaluation of digital maturity of parliamentary business and services. So across the world, parliaments are investing in digital transformation. They are modernizing legislative systems, introducing new digital services for members and staff, strengthening cybersecurity, improving data governance, and increasingly exploring the integration of artificial intelligence into parliamentary processes. However, one important question remains. How do we evaluate whether a parliament is digitally mature? Digital maturity is not only about technology, it's also about governance, interoperability, organizational culture, skills, data quality, service delivery, resilience, and the ability of institutions to evolve sustainably over time. Parliaments operate in a highly complex institutional environment. They must ensure continuity of democratic procedures, maintain trust, protect sensitive information, and support legislative, administrative, and political functions simultaneously. Measuring digital maturity in such an environment therefore requires more than technical indicators. It requires strategic vision, measurable objectives, and the ability to connect digital investments with institutional outcomes. Today's discussion will explore how legislative institutions can assess their own level of digital maturity, identify priorities for improvement, benchmark progress over time, and ensure that modernization efforts remain aligned with parliamentary values and operational realities. We are privileged to have an excellent panel representing different institutional perspectives. Fotis Fitsilis, Head of Documentation at the Hellenic Parliament, Ciarán Doyle, Assistant Secretary of the Houses of the Oireachtas, and Fuat Bayramoglu, Legislative Expert at the Grand National Assembly of Turkey. I will kindly ask them to answer to two questions. The first one being, many parliaments are implementing digital transformation initiatives, but not all institutions evaluate progress in the same way. What are the most important dimensions or indicators that should be considered when assessing the digital maturity of a parliament, and how institutions avoid focusing only on technology while neglecting governance, people, processes, and organizational culture? I will give the floor first to Fotis.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction and for setting the stage. I would like to thank also the organizers, the Houses of the Oireachtas and Luis, Bússola Tech, for bringing us all here. I think the almost the networking is even more important than the actual outcome, the scientific outcome of whatever comes out of this kind of gatherings. And I can try to substantiate that by saying that we are currently in a rapid transformation phase within our institutions. So what matters probably is not some specific insight, but the broad understanding what brings change and how change can be affected through, among others, through some such frameworks that we try to impose. So when I hear the notion or the term digital maturity, this brings memories back. And it does so because it happens that I am around parliaments for more or less 2 decades. So 15 or 20 years ago, we did not call this digital maturity. Nobody actually cared to measure anything, at least for most institutions. I cannot speak for all. However, back then, we still had, we call them maybe digital transformation frameworks, and they have been around for some times, and even my team has prepared some. So when I try to reflect to today's world, I don't find much of a change when it comes to your direct question, what are the elements of these kind of frameworks? First of all, this says something. There's not one element or one dimension. There's usually a lot. And depending on the institution and its institutional culture, and probably its digital maturity, it's maybe a self-referencing term there, one institution may be more prone to apply more complex frameworks than others. This is perfectly fine. After all, in this world, I don't think that there are two institutions that are really similar or really close. We have, of course, institutional systems, the Westminster or the Francophonie, some of them, they're quite close, but not the same. So what are these dimensions? And I will quickly give the floor back to Ludovic. First, we need to be able to assess infrastructure somehow. Now, measurement for engineer. I'm an engineer by profession. Usually, we say, and everybody understands, in order to do something or to change something, you need to measure this. We say this in project management. Now, measurement here might not be numerical, quantitative, might be qualitative, and that's very, very important to keep in mind. So you need to be able to capture technology infrastructure. Then you need to be able to capture data governance. So everything around your data. You need to be able to assess what your data is, what kind of quality it has, what is we will speak later probably about that, if they are structured or not, and so on. Then, of course, you need to be able to measure and assess your processes. Parliaments, if you take every parliament has some sort of standing orders or rules of procedure or whatever you call them. This is a lineup of processes. That is what it is. Then you have your culture, your people and their competencies. This is a very complex ecosystem, not very easily to be measured. Lately, the EU adopted the OECD approach on upskilling and reskilling, trying to bring the workforce up to date to the digital reality of today. And finally, there's the parliamentary or the institutional, if you wish, leadership. Every organization is being guided, also is being characterized also through its people, but mainly through its leadership. Leadership gives the tone. So you need to be able to measure that somehow or assess it, let's say. So these 5 things, these are not new by any means. These are very well documented in science. It's not like it's something that fell from the sky. I think we can use these, we can continue using that also in terms of building or forming maturity frameworks. And once you have located these 5 elements or dimensions, I think it is much easier then to go down with your experts and try to build approaches on how to, as I said, measure or approximate or assess them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ciarán, your opinion on this topic?
Sorry, thanks very much. And I might just, I think the question's interesting because the second part of your question actually focuses on people and processes, and what's what Fotis was closing on, and I would entirely agree. But I suppose I might also go back more broadly, and I remember you held the EU Parliament, and part of your role to draw us together as a body of parliaments at the EU level was to hold an IT maturity assessment day or a couple of days last year in 2025, and that was really important, I think, for us because in our maturing step as an institution, because I think actually parliaments need to create and understand what a common measure of maturity is. And during that set of days and those workshops, we talked about a lot of different variables, which Fotis was talking about there. But the key ones that stood out to me were the governance, IT maturity assessment itself and how to go about that and what it means, digital transformation, and what that actually fundamentally means, and IT efficiency. So maybe I might speak about each of those very briefly. And the first one being governance. And I suppose governance can get a bad rep or a bad reputation. And it can be seen as a blocker. It can be seen as red tape, or sometimes a phrase I've heard from Australia is a beige tape, where there's a lot of internal tape. And it's not red tape that's maybe set out by the government, but it's beige tape that we've introduced ourselves as institutions. And that's actually needed often, quite often. And the real trick with governance is to understand, I think, as you grow up through the organisation over time, and folks talked about 2 decades, and I think I feel like a few of us here, we're all a few decades in our parliaments, and the real trick of governance is to recognise that it's actually how you get things done. And if you can figure out how to embrace it properly and understand it and then ultimately shape it, it's actually how you get things done. It helps you articulate your cases to the organisation, and it puts the organisation on the hook to back those cases once you've articulated them and they understand them and they accept them. And that can be a long journey. It's never once and done. Many revisits, might take several years, but really understanding that governance is a tool to get things done and not a blocker is the big takeaway for me out of that. And governance gives you things then that make things hard, but actually make you stronger and more resilient as an organization and a unit, but also the people within them, right? It makes you be accountable for what you're doing. It makes you develop a metric for the things you're doing. And you have to report on that and be accountable to that regularly, either at steering level or program board level or at management board level or whatever the levels in your institutions are, right? And when you establish governance like that, which is hard on people, it builds them in the right way. It gives them a sustained set of principles and practices and routine meetings and reporting that builds the people that you need to lead the organization into the future in the right way. And that's what maturity is actually about. I think a key takeaway for me is that in order to attain maturity over time, you need to build systems and processes and governance that will outlast you and will serve the people that you are helping bring up through the organisation to then bring the organisation forward. So for me, that's a huge point. And I don't think in my time and in my role in the organisation, I will achieve the level of maturity that I would like to see happen. And I don't think any of us will. However, I think part of my job is to recognise that and recognise that what I'm building is for the future and that I'm here for a point in time. I will leave the Parliament someday, so will my colleagues, but we will have left it behind in a place that has built structures, that build people, that help take the transformation forward and lead us into the new challenges that will come after AI and cybersecurity and all the things we're living through right now. So I think that's a big point on governance. And now quickly on maturity, you do need to measure where you are. You need to understand it, and you need to find a metric or develop a metric or borrow a metric which helps you look at IT and your parliaments broadly, so you can understand all the areas, and then you get to mark where you are. And Ludovic gave us a very useful scoring metric where you can be initial or defined or managed or optimized, and somewhere on that journey find out where you are in each area, find out where your baselines are, and then figure out how to lift slowly but surely up through those to eventually become optimized. So I think that's a really important way to look at what maturity is, and that it's a journey. Okay. Transformation then and efficiency. Look, I think our job here is to transform the Parliament, its content and its services, and to do that in a managed and sustained way, and to figure out, part of this week and this conference is to figure out how to integrate AI into that, and I'll talk about that maybe more later. And then efficiency, the governance, the structures, understanding and maturity all help you with efficiency, because you're spending public money. And it's incumbent on you as custodian of the institution of Parliament, not as a parliamentarian, but as a custodian of the institution of Parliament, to figure out the best and most efficient way to spend that money. And the only way you can do that is if you have strong governance and you know where you are in terms of maturity and you know where you're going to. And that's informed by things like strategy, which we might talk to in my second part of my answer later on as well. So there's just kind of some key things that stood out for me from the workshops we did before Christmas, but I think are long-term standing points which we all should continue to discuss as a group of colleagues. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Just to come back on one of your points, when you say we'll have to leave one day, it's not tomorrow, right? You have to stay a bit more. What your thoughts on this topic?
First of all, I'd like to thank the House of Oireachtas and Bússola Tech for the invitation. It's an honor to be here in Dublin, representing not only my country, actually, but the non-tech people that are here with me, because I'm the only one among the speakers that has a social science background, I guess. So I'll be speaking with that in mind. And secondly, I'll be speaking actually with my handwritten notes, which actually I have 2 teenagers at home. If they were here and if they saw me here, they would probably think that I was from Stone Age, right? Because no one writes right now because everyone types. So, but I like writing, so that's the way I do. But anyhow, if they were here and if they saw me right now, they wouldn't like it as well. If you have teens at home, you know probably. But anyhow, it's an irony. I have handwritten notes coming from Stone Age, but we'll be talking about artificial intelligence. So, yeah. Well, actually, I'm speaking as someone whose parliament has spent years on this, and many of the lessons I'll share with you here actually are from where it went wrong as much as where it went right, actually, in our experience. So if you assess a parliament by counting deployments, like do you have electronic document system, e-signatures, or a website with your records on it, probably most of us will score high in this room. But the most honest figure, actually, as Ciarán mentioned, I know comes from the IPU's own Center for Innovation in Parliament. And on its IT governance maturity model, this year roughly a third of participating parliaments had reached the managed stage, and not one had reached actually the optimized level. So 23% are in initial level, 46% are defined, and 31 is managed, and none is optimized. So whatever maturity is, none of us has arrived. And again, a model that simply counts tools would have never shown us that. So what should we measure instead? Actually, I'll talk about 4 probable dimensions here. Again, of the 4, 3 of them are barely about tech at all. So the first is actually depth. How far digitization has actually reached into the legislative core, not just the administrative surface. So here parliaments differ a lot, actually. By 2017, we had moved our entire administrative side onto an electronic document system. And the natural next thought was actually very simple. So it was just extend that same system to the legislative work, which is bills, amendments, and committee reports. But it turned out, and the reason matters more than the technology, actually. Legislative documents are governed by a different law and follow a very different process and have different rules for how long they must be kept. So they can't sit in the same system as administrative ones. That's why, actually, the administrative side moved very quickly, while bringing the legislative core into digital form is a very separate and was a very hard undertaking. To me, however, that's the real measure of maturity to address the question. Not whether you have handled the easy administrative 80%, like at the beginning we did, but whether you have reached into the legislative 20%, where the obstacle is actually procedure and political agreements, not technology. And the second dimension I want to bring up is governance and ownership, which is also very important. And I'll give you our most important failure here, talk about it. When we began at the early stages, our IT department actually drove digitization on its own, and it stalled. Not for technical reasons, but because there was no cross-departmental ownership, and the units that owned the work were not engaged in it. So it only accelerated when we created an administrative commission chaired by a deputy secretary general level with every unit represented and a coordination unit whose only job was to carry real end user needs into the design. So now I'll make a wild guess here. Probably most of the serious maturity studies actually will converge on the same finding. Governance, culture, and leadership are more often the limiting factor than the technology itself. So regarding the second dimension, one may ask, is the digital agenda owned across the institution or quietly parked in the IT department? And the third dimension is whether the systems actually connect to one another. In many parliaments, it's common to find several good systems actually for legislation, administration, and archives that each do their job well, but don't actually talk to each other, right? So the point I would stress is that maturity isn't the number of systems you've built, it's how well they work together. A handful of actually well-connected systems in the sense will serve a parliament better than a long list of separated projects. The fourth dimension here is, of course, people and adoption, which might as well be called, or I like that specific term, human element. A system nobody was consulted about and nobody quite trusts isn't really a capability, it's a shelfware. So the mature institution looks at whether members and staff actually use what was built. So in the end, maturity actually is about the organization before it's about technology.
Thank you very much. And it is absolutely not outdated, and you are fully in the topic and up to date on that, which I can be very proud of what you've done right now. I think there's a global agreement on all the elements that were mentioned on this topic. Why do you assess something? Is because you want to change. Because you don't want to change, there's no reason to lose time and resources to assess something. And then if you think that you have to change, you have to be aware that most of your work is not to change, it's to run. You have committees, you have plenaries, you have activities, you need to pay people, you need to maybe organize meetings and so on. All this is part of your running activities. So 70% of your resources will focus on running your activities. And then all the question about the transformation is, what do I do with the 30% that remains? Of the 30%, very often 20% are, let's say, incremental transformation, small transformation, and 10% will be radical transformation. And the overall point is that when everybody starts to have ideas on what transformation could happen, how do you prioritize these ones? Because you do not have resources to implement all of them, to make them all successful. So how do you do that? How do you choose that? Who is choosing that? And that's all the points that were discussed by all the panelists there. It's a question about first governance before all, because it has to be driven. This is a question of resources from the organization that will be dedicated for transformation. So which one will be chosen? It's a question of governance first. And then you have a set of dimensions that you will evaluate after all, saying, okay, I may change in some domains, and I may benchmark myself with similar parliaments to see whether they advance in some domains or not. Benchmarking can be made by formal assessment. It can be made by oral exchanges, such as one that we have right now. So it can take very, very different ways. And the last point that you mentioned, it's true that it's a human adventure. It's people. It's not about technology, it's about people. And people are the foundation within the organization. You can draw the best organization you may dream. If you do not have the right people to put in the box, it will fail. So it's about people. And you rightly pointed out. So thanks for your contribution on this first question. And now, because of course AI takes a step in every field, AI will take a step in this one. Artificial intelligence is increasingly becoming part of parliamentary business and services, and that we have seen this morning with different interventions. But how can digital maturity assessments help parliaments prepare for the responsible integration of AI, including areas such as data readiness, interoperability, cybersecurity, ethical governance, and staff capabilities? Fotis, what do you think about that?
Well, once you have, as you rightly said, and the colleagues as well, once you have a feeling, or even more than a feeling, measurements or assessments, whatever you prefer, and an indication where you want to go, then everything becomes much easier. But again, I kindly think of my previous point. All this is not new, so we do not need to reinvent the wheel when it comes to change and change management. These are well-established concepts for decades, right? Of course, we are not Ludits here. We need to adapt everything under the perspective, under the prospect maybe of integrating serious amount of artificial intelligence into our processes. Now, this one can debate. It's almost a philosophical debate here, whether AI will change the institution, the nature of the institution, whether it will be able to support democracy in a meaningful way. This is all very important questions. But I will try, for this limited response, to break it down to pieces. So, okay, assuming leadership, that's where it comes all from. Leadership knows where to go. So we have some objectives, some goals and objectives, and a vision. But wait, all this are elements of a strategy. And parliaments have been designing, and other organizations, of course, have been designing strategies for ages. So if you think a little bit, let's say from a bird's eye view, if you see this all from above, okay, what do I need to do to design and then implement a digital or even more an AI strategy? So if you think it like this, it becomes a little bit more, not easier, but maybe it can be handled objectively. For instance, if you have a strategy, okay, you might need to, or it's necessary to operationalize it somehow. You need an operational plan. That's usually so it's not a strategy, it's never a standalone document. It has an operationalization document next to it. Then parliaments and any organization does not have unlimited resources. So you need to prioritize. And how do you do this ideally? Well, in the case of AI, it's a little bit less obvious, because on the one side, you have the AI tools and technologies, and on the other side, you have the parliamentary processes. So you need to make a match. This match is a very specific experiment for every institution. It will never be the same. Never. As scientifically, our team has developed approaches to do that, and we have been running such experiments for my parliament, obviously, the Hellenic Parliament. We have been doing this for the Parliament of Canada, for the Parliament of Argentina, and even in the legislatures of Brazil. And now we are planning for doing it in Kenya, the Parliament of Kenya. I'm talking about a prioritization exercise. And please note, we have done it in Greece 5 years ago. We need to run it again because technology now moves forward. So, and from a leadership perspective, when I'm talking to the head of the parliament or for Secretary General or even the Speaker, this level does not like this kind of uncertainty in the debate or in the scientific approach. When it becomes clear that technologies move, whereas processes stay over longer periods of time stable, this obviously creates a mismatch. So where do you invest if you know that in a year from now, probably some of these technologies will be obsolete? It's a very difficult exercise. Then you need to implement. Of course, it's another dimension, and I'm going to take it out of the equation right now. You need maybe one of the most important things that is never mentioned. I just heard it maybe from just one of the previous panelists. Maybe the most important feature that a parliament needs to undertake is to train its people. Training cannot be, you cannot have enough of it. It needs to be continuous, needs to be targeted, and it needs to be differentiated depending on actors. And said, the European Union, this is by no means represents the whole planet, that's not the case, but it has an interesting approach based on science again, based on the OECD's skill set framework. So there is an approach to train, and increasingly, maybe not parliaments, but let's say training organizations trying to use that. It will come to parliaments eventually at some time. And last but not least, I think we can all agree on that. You need a governance layer. You need to agree how you will supervise all this, how you will plan all this, how you will procure it, how you will oversee implementation, and of course operation. This is a very tough exercise, and this is why governance frameworks alone exist, because it's so complicated. But for every given parliament, what I just presented needs to be run independently. That's the problem. So of course you are receiving now input from everybody, but this is by no means a workaround. You will have to run this by yourselves, all these elements one by one. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Ciarán.
Thanks very much, Ludovic. Yeah, I might just build on some of the points Fotis made there and also borrow from Fuat from earlier in his first contribution, if that's okay. And I'll be brief because I'm just looking at time and I don't need to say a lot to maybe make the points I need to make. So I'll try and do that for the group and help out because it's because of me that we're running late overall. So apologies. So the question is, how do we use digital maturity assessments, I suppose, across these domains of interoperability, cyber, ethical governance, and staff capabilities and data readiness to prepare us for the integration of AI? Okay, and I suppose a very interesting point that Fuat made earlier is that from a social sciences background, and I have one as well, is when it comes to you as an individual and where you fit in a society, the most important relationship you can have is actually the one with yourself. It's not a relationship that you have with anyone else or the people around you and the peers that you have. That's all important. But the most important relationship you can have is with yourself first. And I think if you take that viewpoint, you should look at the Parliament in that way as well and say, what is the Parliament's relationship with itself? How does it operate? What does it do? How does it function? Where is it on its journey to change? And how is it going to change into the future? And there's a very, very old kind of piece of work in psychology and social science around self-actualization, and that means becoming the best you can be, or going to where you want to be and becoming the best version of you that you can be. So I think if you can start by really knowing where you are, and as a parliament and an institution, via maturity assessments across these domains, but also in terms of how you deliver services and run with the operations, then you can really actually affect change, and you can transform, and you can bring in stuff like AI in a responsible way. So for me, that's a foundational principle. And the key thing to do that, as Fotis said, is strategy. So strategy is never defined, it's visionary, it's a hypothesis based on these variables being true and these things being equated into the equation or added into the equation. We can move to this place and to this better place, ideally, as a parliament. So I think that's really important, well, that you figure out how to understand where you are as a parliament, what's going on around you, and then create a vision on how to get there. And that, a lot of people should know this already and do know this already. But actually, vision is hard work. It's tricky. Not everyone agrees on what it is, and sometimes people working in IT can be very aspirational, and that can come up against a wall when you're dealing with the institution or people working from the business side. And the real trick in working that out with people is that you really understand what makes them tick from the parliamentary institution side of things, so you can work with them to make the institution better overall. So I'm not giving a lesson to anyone here, but I'm just saying how I approach these problems and how I view how we should be looking at the institution itself and how we should be preparing it for AI. That is how I will do it, and how I will do it with the team of people we have in the unit itself, in IT, and also with the organisation as well. We will go out with this energy and this vision for change and share that with people and meet them where they are and take it all on board and mix it all together and figure out how to make the place better. That's the plan. That's what we'll continue to do. And while I'm in the role, that's what I'll always want to do. So I think that's an important thing to maybe say. As Fuat said, there's a huge human dimension to this, and we need to be continually cognizant of it. Now, getting back to the dimensions then very quickly, data, interoperability, cyber, ethical governance, staff capabilities, like data, I'll say very clearly, we don't have a data strategy here in the Oireachtas. We need one, and we have to develop one, and we need the capacity to do that. So we need to prioritize it. So we need a chief data officer. We need to spend time in our data, understand it, map it, understand the models we have, and figure out then a long-term strategy to change that in terms of a roadmap, in terms of capacity planning, and in terms of the wider strategy that the Parliament has its body overall, and where data fits and sits within that. And that'll all feed AI, because you can't really do good AI without good data in the first place, right? And we all know that. Interoperability, I think a lot of people know this already, but then it's enterprise architecture, right? What are the tiers? Business, data, applications, technology. How do you know that? You have to spend time learning about yourself and having the best relationship you can with yourself as the head of IT in your area, so you can communicate clearly with the organization and figure out how to change the EA, the enterprise architecture, to deliver on the vision and the change. Cyber, here it is. It's in everybody's world. It's a real concern. It's the thing that probably gets most attention from the organisation now in terms of time and budget, if you raise the cyber flag. And you shouldn't use that in a way that is to coerce colleagues, but you should use it in a way that is serious, because it is serious. And AI is only going to accelerate and advance that threat that we face as a set of Parliament. So you need a cyber strategy, and you need capacity, and you do need budget and prioritisation for cyber initiatives in the Parliament. And again, I'm only speaking to our own use cases, but I'm sharing them collectively with with colleagues, right? Ethical governance, that has to be a core foundation of your AI. Any AI work you do, responsible AI, aligning to the principles outlined in, well, in our case, the EU AI Act, or whatever piece of legislation you have in your domains. And then I suppose I might finish on staff capabilities. It can't be just in token language. It can't be, oh, it's important, and our most important resources are our people. That is just talk. You have to live that and really think about that as leaders in your organization. That's what we will do and try to do in our organization, to say, how are we really actually going to develop a skills matrix, understand the people we have, understand what's important to them, what makes them tick, where they want to go, and therefore how do we then look at the Parliament and how it serves them best and how they serve the Parliament best, and figure out that enmeshment that will help us build better people and better career paths for people, so they can feel successful in their roles, feel some meaning, feel some purpose, and that purpose will serve the vision and the strategy of the organisation. So I often come with these things with a lot of energy, but that is who I am and what I am. And when I look at the question of, well, how do we look ahead at the parliamentary level and make sure we bring in AI in this way? It's in this way. It's really energetic. It's really personal, but it's a lot of hard work at the same time. And that's me.
Thank you, Ciarán. Yeah, I can tell you that you're much more than a token. Very much. What your thoughts on this topic?
Again, before a parliament brings in AI, the most useful thing actually it can do is to take an honest look at its own digital maturity, which actually addresses what Fotis just mentioned. It's self-observation, but also if, it's better if it's done from outside. So actually AI doesn't tidy up a weak foundation. So the assessment is just a clear mirror in that sense, because it shows you in advance where AI is actually likely to struggle in the future. So again, there are a couple of statistics. Recent work actually found that high maturity organizations keep their AI initiatives running beyond 3 years at more than the rate of low maturity ones. So this is important. And again, they are roughly 4 times as likely to have business units that actually trust and use AI. And there's another figure, 9 in 10 of them had already appointed clear AI leadership. And building on that, I'd like to actually quickly touch the areas Ludovic specified, which one of them being data readiness. A lot has been said about this, so I don't have anything new to add onto it. AI is only as good as the data beneath it, so that's the one area. The second one is the area of expertise of Fotis, I believe. It's cybersecurity and resilience. So AI actually widens both the data you hold and the surface you expose in that sense. So a maturity assessment is necessary because only then you are not bolting a powerful new capability onto an infrastructure that can't carry it. So the third area Ludovic mentioned was ethical governance. So a parliament that has found it hard to govern its own document system is unlikely to find governing its algorithms any easier. So remember, the cross-departmental body that I mentioned in the first question, that it was formed in Turkey with the Deputy Secretary General heading the committee. So that cross-departmental body that already owns the Parliament's digital agenda could as well be exact same body that actually owns the Parliament's AI policy as well. So the fourth area is, again, building on what has been said recently, is staff capabilities. So the reason I believe high maturity organizations trust and use AI, I don't think it's better models, it's better prepared people. So I believe digital maturity and AI readiness are actually the same agenda, not any different. And normally, actually, the sequence should be as follows: to assess honestly, fix the data, fix the governance, and fix the skills first. And then let AI build on a foundation that's already waiting. Otherwise, actually, the immature sequence will take over, which is buy the AI and then discover the foundation can't carry it. So, yes, that's what I have.
Thank you very much. Based on what you said, there's one thing that you already said this morning, which is that AI is just another technology. We are saying it, we're repeating it again and again and again. If you are not convinced that AI is a technology, then we have to discuss about philosophy, we have to discuss about sociology, and even we have to discuss about theology if you want. But this is a tool that we use in order to perform some tasks. Some may be very complex, I do not go against, but this is just another technology. So exactly as we said, Fuat, when you design your digital strategy, AI is one of the chapters from your digital strategy. It's not a strategy in itself. It may be an important component inside, but it's part of it. So you have your digital transformation. You would like to go somewhere. It's a vision. Word was mentioned several times. You have a vision, then you will develop a strategy in order to go somewhere. The vision is something you would like to reach. You never know if you will really arrive where you would like to go because it's a vision. It's a target. I would like to have an apple because I like fruits, and then you will get an orange. Still, you have a fruit, but it's not the same. But okay, you have a fruit at the end. So you have a vision, you develop your strategy, you'll go somewhere, you try to reach it. And how to reach it is enterprise architecture. In IT, it's called like that. Nobody likes it. Everybody mentions it, nobody likes it. And why nobody likes it? Because in order to assess something, you need to have an evaluation of something that we call data. These data or digital assets will be processes, there will be data readiness, there will be cybersecurity logs, there will be a set of elements that we do not have, and which is painful. But if you want to take informed decisions, if you want to have AI taking informed decisions, you will need to have this one. You will need to have data first. Data is not only something for AI, data is for the quality of your organization as a whole. Informed decisions are taken on good quality of data. That's the start. And then you may evaluate and have a good representation of your organization, and then you may discuss on that. So AI is just a tool. It will help you to transform your organization. Of course, it will be implied in many dimensions of the one we mentioned about cybersecurity, about data, about a lot of layers. But please consider it like that and not more. So as we conclude this discussion, one important message clearly emerges on the intervention, that digital maturity is not a destination, but a continuous institutional journey. Parliaments are evolving in an environment shaped by rapid technological change, increasing citizen expectation, cybersecurity risks, growing data volume, and now the emergence of artificial intelligence as a transformation capability. In this context, evaluating digital maturity becomes an essential governance tool. It helps institutions identify strengths, reveal weaknesses, prioritize investments, and ensure that modernization efforts support parliamentary resilience, transparency, and democratic effectiveness. Digital maturity assessments should therefore not be understood as purely technical exercise. They are strategic instruments that allow parliamentary administrations to better align technology, governance, skill, procedures, and institutional objectives. I would like now to invite each of our panelists to offer a 1-minute concluding reflection, perhaps identifying one priority area that Parliament should focus on over the next 3 years in order to strengthen their digital maturity and institutional readiness for AI-enabled parliamentary services. Fotis, your 1-minute guideline.
Thank you very much. I will try to make it in 30 seconds. We always have spoken about evidence-based policymaking. We have this in our hands. When it comes to the introduction of new tools and probably new processes that goes along them, we need to do that science-based. Do not reinvent the wheel. Rely on established and probably proven out there frameworks and maybe advice by people that have already implemented that. And last but not least, there are no workarounds for this. I think it's nice to hear and listen and get together, but in order to develop ownership for your parliaments, you will need to do the whole stack, bottom to top or top to bottom yourselves. We're here to help you, of course, and you're here to help us. Nobody's an expert in this. We are trying to fix the plane while we are flying, so that's very tough. Thank you.
Ciarán.
No, I'll try and do it in 2 sentences. I think we need to be, good luck. But I think we need to be, look, I'll speak for us. What I would like to see us do and what I would like us to do is to be very deliberate on the maturity assessment, actually, and make it a priority. Because I think if we do that, that'll take us to a place where we can actually then help prioritize, plan, and strategize for the organization. So if that was it, and I spent 3 years doing it, but actually achieved it, and we achieved it as a unit, I think that could be some of the most valuable stuff we could do. We would know where we are, and then we would know where we want to get to next with the organization.
Yeah, great, thanks. Fuat?
Again, there's a number actually from the 2024 report of the IPU. You all probably know that parliaments actually are coming up with artificial intelligence solutions. Mainly, they come up with the transcription part. But other than that, it's very low. It was in 2024, it was like 2% of all the parliaments were only using AI in legislative matters. So it was probably in 2 years' time, it improved, but not as much as the transcription. So that's why actually, if I had to pick just one priority, it would be to digitize the part of Parliament that actually makes the law. Not well, the administrative part is already done. So it's payroll, the website, the emails. Those all have been handled in the last years. But in many parliaments, the lawmaking itself, the bills, the amendments, and the committee work is still mainly on paper. It's the part that actually matters the most, I believe, and it's the part we have left for the next years coming. I'll choose it because it pays off twice over, I believe, and it's the last real step towards digital maturity. Again, remember, on IPU scale, not one parliament has yet reached the optimized level. And because an AI is only ever as good as the data we let it see, this step is the groundwork for any AI we can trust. The technology can wait. We should get the lawmaking core onto solid digital ground. Only then, actually, I believe the rest comes possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So on these last 1 minute points and the thermodynamic approach of Ciarán to inject energy into maturity assessment, I would like to thank again the three panelists who presented to you today with Fotis Fitsilis from the Hellenic Parliament, Ciarán Doyle from the House of the Oireachtas, and Fuat Bayramoglu from the Grand National Assembly of Turkey. And I would like again to thank the House of the Oireachtas for enabling this conference, and Bússola Tech for enabling also this conference. Thank you very much to all of you, and we wish you a good lunch.